the whispers of the forgotten house. The night was colder than it should have been. The small town of Ashton Creek in rural Pennsylvania was no stranger to bitter winters, but tonight's air carried something more than the chill of December. It carried silence, a suffocating stillness that pressed on the chest of anyone who walked beneath the bare branches of the surrounding forest. On the edge of town, where the streetlights gave way to shadows, stood a massive Victorian house, long abandoned by its owners. Locals referred to it only as the Forgotten House. Its tall, gabled roof pierced the night sky like a spear, and its broken windows reflected nothing but darkness. Few dared to even glance at it for too long. But to Amina Hassan, a 22-year-old Muslim college student from Chicago, this house was not a place of superstition, but of research. She was studying paranormal anthropology at a university in Philadelphia and had come to document ghost legends tied to immigrant families who had once lived in America's smaller towns. Ashton Creek had caught her attention because of the whispers. Rumors that the house was cursed and that strange voices had been heard calling the Adhan, the Muslim call to prayer, in the dead of night, even though no mosque existed for miles away. She arrived in her small silver sedan just past midnight. The moon hung high, its pale glow washing over the broken fence that enclosed the property. As she stepped out of her car, her boots crunched over the frozen gravel, and her breath fogged in the air. She pulled her black hijab tighter around her face and clutched her notebook. "Bismillah," she whispered under her breath, before taking her first step toward the rusted iron gate. The wind whistled softly through the trees, but there was no other sound. No crickets, no distant dogs barking, no passing cars. Just silence. As she entered, the gate screeched open with a metallic groan, the kind that felt like a scream dragged across the night. She hesitated, her heart thudding against her ribs, but forced herself onward. Every step seemed to echo too loudly against the cracked stone pathway that led to the door. The front door loomed before her, tall and splintered, its paint peeling away like shedding skin. Amina set down her backpack, pulled out a flashlight, and tested it. The beam cut across the darkness, illuminating dust and cobwebs that clung to the porch like shrouds. She pressed her palm against the door. To her surprise, it pushed open easily, almost as if it had been waiting for her. The inside smelled of rot and mold, mixed with something older, like metallic, rusted iron or dried blood. Dust danced in the air, disturbed by her entrance. Her flashlight beam revealed broken furniture, torn wallpaper, and family portraits that hung crookedly on the walls. The faces in the pictures were faded, their eyes unnervingly blurred, yet she could feel them following her. She raised her phone and began recording. This is Amina Hassan, December 9th, 2025, documenting initial entry into the forgotten house of Ashton Creek. Local accounts suggest supernatural disturbances, including unexplained voices, cold spots, and possible Islamic connections. Her voice quivered slightly, but she steadied it with faith. Her grandmother had always told her, "Fear only Allah, not His creation." Still, as she moved deeper into the house, she couldn't shake the sensation that the walls themselves were breathing. The first floor was eerily intact despite years of abandonment, A large chandelier hung from the ceiling above, its crystals broken but glimmering faintly in the moonlight that streamed through shattered windows. A grand staircase stretched upward, its banister carved with intricate patterns that reminded Amina strangely of Islamic geometry. She paused. This wasn't coincidence. The house, though Victorian in design, bore traces of something else. Archways curved too gracefully, wall carvings too precise, symbols etched faintly into the wood. She traced her fingers over one, a six-pointed star encircled by faded Arabic script. Her breath caught. It read, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. But what was it doing here, in an abandoned American mansion miles from any Muslim community? Before she could get further, a sound echoed from upstairs. It was faint, almost like a child's whisper. She froze. Her heart hammered in her chest. The whisper grew louder, clearer. Her flashlight flicked upward toward the staircase, and for a moment she swore she saw movement, something small, like the shadow of a child darting past. Swallowing her fear, she steadied her recorder. Noted, auditory disturbance, possible child's voice. She began to climb. Each wooden step groaned beneath her weight. The higher she went, the heavier the air became, as though invisible hands pressed against her chest. Halfway up, her flashlight dimmed and flickered. No, not now, she muttered, smacking it lightly. The beam returned just in time to reveal something at the top of the stairs. A small figure stood there, a boy, no older than 7, with pale skin and hollow eyes that reflected the light like glass. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Amina froze, her lips trembling as she whispered, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed devil. The boy tilted his head unnaturally to one side, then opened his mouth wide, too wide, and from the depths of his throat, not his lips, came a sound that made Amina's blood run cold. It was the Adhan, but twisted, the words slurred, broken, rising and falling like a mockery of prayer. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Her knees nearly buckled. This was no ordinary haunting. Something was imitating the sacred call, something that wanted her to hear. The boy's hollow eyes locked onto hers. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished into the darkness of the hallway above. The silence returned. But Amina knew she was no longer alone. The dark woods. Sarah, a young American traveler, had never believed in anything beyond what her eyes could see. Yet on a cold, moonless night, she found herself lost inside a forest in a foreign land, a forest that locals had warned her never to enter. Her phone had died, the paths had disappeared, and only the crunch of leaves beneath her trembling steps kept her company until the whispers began, faint at first, then louder, calling her name in voices that seemed to come from the trees themselves, voices that chilled her blood and froze her breath. When she stumbled and fell, she saw 2 glowing eyes watching her from the darkness, and the air thickened until she thought she would suffocate. But suddenly, out of the suffocating void, a firm and steady voice recited, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and the whispers vanished as though strangled, leaving her face to face with a young Muslim man named Ahmed, who, flashlight in hand, told her that she should not be there. And though terrified, she followed him because something inside her knew he was her only chance. As they moved through the trees, laughter that sounded like broken glass filled the forest and shadows hissed, closing in. And when Sarah demanded to know what hunted them, Amit told her, shayateen, evil jinn, words she wanted to dismiss as superstition until an unseen force wrapped around her ankle and began dragging her screaming into the darkness until Amit's powerful voice thundered Ayat al-Kursi, the verse of the throne, burning away the grip and freeing her, making her realize that her cross. The attic was nothing but shadow. Amina's flashlight cut across rotting beams and broken crates, but the beams seemed swallowed by the darkness, as though the room itself devoured light. The air was suffocatingly cold, biting into her lungs. Every instinct told her to run, but her feet carried her forward anyway, towards something unseen, something waiting. As she stepped inside, the attic door slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed like a gunshot. She spun around, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Ya Allah, she whispered briefly, pressing her forehead against the door. Give me strength. When she turned back, she realized the attic was not empty. Shapes lined the far wall, small, hunched forms, barely illuminated. Her heart dropped as her flashlight steadied on them. Children. Dozens of them. Their pale faces were vacant, their eyes sunken, their lips whispering silently. They stood perfectly still, like lifeless dolls, yet their presence filled the attic with suffocating dread. Amina's throat tightened. Who are you? Their whispers rose, overlapping until they became a single voice, echoing as though the walls themselves spoke. We are the forgotten. He fed on us. He still feeds. Her pulse quickened. She took a trembling step back. Who did this to you? The children all raised their hands simultaneously, pointing to the farthest corner of the attic. Amina turned. At first, she saw nothing, just darkness, so thick it seemed solid. Then the darkness shifted, peeling away from the walls, rising taller, whiter. A figure emerged. Its body was formless, a shadow that rippled like smoke, but its face was wrong. A grotesque mask that shifted between human and beast, with eyes like burning coals and a mouth that stretched too far, too wide. When it spoke, its voice shook the attic. They brought me here. Amina clutched her recorder, whispering shakily, entity, manifestation, appears tied to... The shadow's head snapped toward her, and her words were stolen from her throat. She could no longer speak. No sound came out, though her lips moved desperately. You think words can save you? Your prayers, your names, they are meaningless here. This is my house. The children's whispers rose again, frantic this time, overlapping in terror. He lies. He fears his name. Say it. Say it. Amina's chest burned as she struggled for breath. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. No matter the darkness, Allah's words are stronger. Summoning every ounce of strength, she forced out the words that clawed at her throat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The attic shook violently. The children screamed, not in fear, but in release, their voices blending into one cry of hope. The shadow recoiled, its form distorting, smoke ripping from its body as if burned by invisible fire. It lunged at her, its twisted face inches from hers, but she kept reciting. Stronger, louder. Her voice no longer shook. The shadow clawed at her, but its hands passed through her as though she were fire and it was nothing but smoke. It shrieked a final time, the sound inhuman, echoing like the roar of 1,000 beasts. Then it collapsed into itself, imploding into darkness that vanished with a deafening silence. The attic was still. The children were gone. Amina collapsed to her knees, tears stinging her eyes, her chest heaving with exhaustion. Her flashlight flickered, then steadied, casting its beam across the attic floor. There, where the shadow had stood, lay something small. A worn leather journal, its cover cracked with age. She picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. The pages were filled with Arabic script, though written clumsily, as if by someone who barely understood. Between verses of the Quran were desperate scribbles in English. He comes in the night. The prayers keep him at bay. We should never have built this place. At the final page, she froze. The handwriting had changed. Careful, neat, deliberate. If you find this, know the truth. We brought something across the sea. It followed us. It feeds on our children. Only the words of Allah hold it back. This house is its prison. The ink trailed off into a smear, as if written in haste. Amina closed the journal, clutching it tightly to her chest. She understood now. A Muslim family, long forgotten, had once lived here. Immigrants who carried with them both their faith and something darker, something they never intended to unleash. The entity had fed on their children, twisting even the sacred into mockery. The house was not just cursed, it was a tomb. She whispered a quiet prayer for the lost souls before standing on unsteady legs. The attic door creaked open behind her, though she hadn't touched it. She descended slowly, the house now eerily silent, its oppressive weight lifted. When she stepped out into the cold night, the first rays of dawn were just breaking over the horizon. She turned back once. The house stood silent, broken, its windows empty, but no longer hungry. Amina pressed the journal to her chest and whispered, Alhamdulillah. She knew her work wasn't finished. She would document everything, share the truth, and honor those forgotten voices. But most importantly, she had learned something deeper. No darkness, no matter how ancient, could withstand the light of faith. And as she walked back to her car, she realized something else. The whispers were gone. For perhaps a century, the house was truly silent.